Hey everybody, what's up? Where we are within the energy is you having awareness about something after the fact. This feels like something that actually could have been like kind of stressful for you to go through. It could have been something that felt not easy, but it also feels like a process that may have changed you. You can feel. We're starting off with Page of Swords, and we also have Nine of Pentacles here. This can be a phase that has been teaching you to be more self-reliant, to trust your judgment as well, and your ability to make things happen. We also have the Knight of Wands here. I am seeing there be a healing period that you're in right now. This can be putting a pause on some other stuff. I get in general, like you're figuring out how to move forward properly. Maybe you felt like the way that you were approaching something before, it wasn't really working for what it is that you're trying to do. Now can be a time when you're kind of switching it up, but it seems like something needed to be paused and reevaluated before you could move forward. Meaning, if you were trying to do something or make something happen and it kept feeling like the approach was failing or it was like making matters worse in some way, this feels like taking a closer look at things and saying like, where am I going wrong here? Let me really look into this and see. Maybe even you were avoiding taking a closer look at something, which now you're taking the time actually to do. I also get the sense like before you could have been more repetitively doing something and it maybe wasn't like cultivating the results that you wanted long term, but at the same time there could have been a sense of relief in expressing that energy immediately. So it could have been like drawing you back into a cycle, but it feels like it was going around and around and around. Now it feels like pausing and taking a look at this because you don't want to be in that space anymore, in that way, kind of landing in that same situation again and again. Because you can really like not be feeling great at this point. We're having Five of Pentacles looking at Four of Swords, which is I really need to take this time and I need to care for myself and I need to really do any type of like self-care, any type of instigating when it comes to your own process. Because Five of Pentacles at the end of the day can be stuff that we're not really feeling good about. And yeah, I'm seeing it more so like that. Something that's going on that you need to take a closer look at because of the way that you are feeling about it. It feels like this is something that I would actually like to change. I don't want to stay feeling like this. And it feels like Four of Swords is the answer to that. Like, instead of continuing to move, there needs to be a pause put on things. And the Four of Swords that's in this deck specifically, it's giving this feeling of there being some type of thing weighing on you psychologically, like weighing on you mentally, and needing to let it out in some way. So this can be admitting to certain things, it can be recognizing certain things, and this can be like some type of channel, like being a conduit for these things that are going on that you feel like are bringing you down in some way, you're not feeling good. Like this feels even like some pent up energy that maybe you didn't realize at first it was there, but then it is there. And it can be stuff that holds you back from where you want to be, and stuff that also brings you into cycles that you don't want to be in. So it's like a lot of what you don't want has been surfacing lately. And so taking time to pause, where it's like not digging yourself in a deeper hole here, maybe you feel like that's going to be helpful. Coming back to this Four of Swords, it feels like there's some type of release that you are going to be having, and this is something that's going to help take you out of this space. Because I even get you, regardless of who or whatever is around you, who you're interacting with, it feels like there's been some like period of isolation that you've been in, and it's been bringing you to this place and maybe having to confront things within yourself that possibly, I get like not confronting certain things because you may have felt like even if you do that, it's not going to be effective, but it feels like something's going on at this point that you may be changing your mind about that. Because, you know, you're not going to do some type of work if you feel like it's going to be pointless, but this feels like you actually may be ready to get this off of your chest now, because it's not feeling good to hold it within you and to contain it within you. But there can be fear surrounding you actually doing this. Because you can feel like your circumstances are maybe not supportive of you letting this out. That can be something that you have going on here, and it can keep you shying away from this corner of your mind even. What I'm getting is that you're getting closer to that point where you're going to move forward, but it feels like only after moving through the psychological work, which it's funny, like the way that I'm seeing the energy come through, it feels like this is a huge thing that you have to do, but it almost feels like so much more is going to happen after. Hold on, let me rewind a little bit for what I'm seeing. Even though this feels very weighted in the beginning, it feels like as soon as you like get over it, as soon as you move through, as soon as you get past the gate of this, a bunch of things end up happening after that point. But it feels weird. It's like I'd expect an energy like this that feels so potentially heavy to take up most of the spread. But if, let's say we have 5 parts to this reading, it only takes up 1 of the 5 parts. And I would think that this would have, like, take up at least 3/5 or like 4/5 of the reading. And for some reason, it's just this like really small bulk. But nothing else can happen until this part takes place. And it feels like there's an investigation that you're doing with yourself here. And it has to do with limitations that you're perceiving and something that is trying to find its way out of you. Something that wants to be released from within you here. That you can have just told yourself it has to stay in and it wants to come out. In some way, shape, or form, there's something going on here that like wants to find its way out. And this Four of Swords can be maybe a safe space that you're going to be in to be able to do this initially. Like Four of Swords is giving me the feeling of like being with a therapist or something like that. Like somewhere where you feel like you can just like let this out, and it can be your concerns that you're letting out. It can be your journal that you have. Whatever this is, it feels like this thing that's been weighing on you heavily. And it doesn't have to just be one thing. It can be multiple things where it just feels like there's like fear that's holding it within. There's this, and I also get this feeling of like an inability for you to express this, but it may not have immediately even initially been recognized as this. This could have been something you were carrying and felt like it just wasn't an option to do that. And so it was just going to kind of stay within. But now it feels like, well, I'm not feeling too hot now. And so it feels like this is motivating you to now take a look at this, because you're in a position that you hope that this changes. You don't want to be in this position. And that can motivate change. It can motivate necessary change, but there's gonna have to be an investigation of this. But coming back to this thing of, if you're telling yourself it's pointless to investigate this because it's something that's not going to change and it feels pointless, it can keep you from doing this work and uncovering this and exposing this. And even though it feels like there's already an awareness of this, it feels almost like you can feel like letting this out would be pointless. But I'm getting this need for a release here, because you can feel like the energy has gotten lodged within you and it feels like it needs to be released now at this point. So you go from feeling like you can't to feeling like you can. And that marks some really profound progress that has been being made when it comes to the way that you are maneuvering within your environment and also your psyche. And it also feels like that puts a spotlight on some type of like congestion that you've been experiencing that you are now clearing out. And this is emotional, psychological stuff right now that's being addressed, but this, you can also feel very, very exposed. This can feel very vulnerable, and you can even know that you're moving in the direction where there may be like more pain that you're facing. So that can also be another reason why you've been avoiding this too, is because you know that if you were to go in this direction, I feel so surprised that the reading went in this direction for some reason, because I was not really initially getting this, but now the way that everything's unfolding, I get this sense like, if you know that you have to face something and it's going to be painful, but it is your way moving aligned with the truth of your storyline, and you know that if you go in that direction, you're going to have to face something challenging, you're going to have to face something difficult. When you are not feeling capable of doing that, it feels beside the point for you to be addressing that. Because you're like, I can't do it, I can't face up to that, it's not something, like, I know that it's there, I know that if I want to move forward, that's something that I'm gonna have to face, and I just feel like I can't do it. So there's something here about taking yourself even out of that space mentally and stepping into a more empowered perspective here that has you looking at it and saying, like, I know that if I want to move forward, I'm going to have to go right there and I'm going to have to address it, and I know that I can do this. So there's something about that shift of a mindset that like changes everything. The situation doesn't change, it's how you perceive yourself in relation to the space actually that changes. And that's how you know that you're making progress, because you're more willing to address this thing because you know that this is part of moving forward. You know that this is part of the present moment that you are stepping into, and it's part of your feminine water healing storyline that this is connected with. When I say feminine, it just means your receptive emotional energy, which is something that's also going to heal and strengthen your intuition and your self-trust as well. And this is something that may not always feel empowered. You may not always feel empowered to stand within that space, to be accepting of the way that you feel truly. And so this is something that can really be, I think, being faced so it can be digested at this point. Otherwise, you can kind of like know that this has been in the queue and know that this is not only a soft spot but a vulnerable spot for you. And you can also not like when something like pokes you in that place, because it can feel, you can kind of like wince energetically when this is something that gets brought up, and it can be something that's going to remain like that until it's addressed. It's like a thorn in your side here. And there can be an emotional disconnect that you feel because of this. There can be, you can feel both like numbed and also sensitive at the same time. It feels like it gives off that weird like dichotomy a bit. What it also feels like is happening is that you're taking a step back from somewhere that you had been showing up that I think like wasn't really allowing you to move through this. So this can be, it really depends for each of you. For some of you, this can be taking a step back from playing a certain role for a certain somebody. It can be something having to do with a relationship. It can have something to do with a job. Whatever it is, just some type of role that you play. This feels like this is going to sort of be hanging over your head until you take the time to move through this. If I were to like say what I'm seeing this suggestion be within the energy, also know that I understand it's not like we can just like disappear from our lives. What I'm seeing within the energy feels like as much as you can, there being this bit of disengaging from something that is going to have you compulsively within a cycle where it's not allowing the healing to take place. So this feels like a step back that has to happen so you can actually do the healing. You know what this reminds me of? If somebody, I'm not saying that it's this, but this is like the best kind of example that I could use for the archetype of the energy. It's like if somebody is actively using a substance, generally they're not allowed to go into therapy because they're not clear-minded. And so it feels like it's going to be ineffective because of all of the stuff that can be brought up, and then it can sort of like exacerbate things and why we use what we use. So this can be kind of like if you were to start doing this work, which it already feels like it's kind of begun, but if you were to get more into this kind of like unraveling and healing process for yourself, you may get triggered and it may make you cling even more to this situation that you're in, which for some of you can start seeing that happen. Maybe if you started unpacking stuff, and it can make you cling even more tightly to this thing that you're meant to take a step back from. So maybe something like that is going on within the energy. Coming back to this thing of, I know you can't really, most of us don't have the luxury, or I guess the give ourselves permission to like disappear from our lives, right? This does feel like if there is a way that you can take a step back and kind of put a pause on this, whatever is like reinforcing you to show up and not check what this is that's going on, it is something that you may find helpful. We don't always necessarily see that as an option that we have. So just take that into consideration and think about for your situation and where you are with this, what you are able to do. Something about this is that if this is something that you end up working on, this is something that is going to create a future that you feel in peace about. Something where you actually feel at peace with this part of yourself, where you don't feel like this thing, you're carrying it within you and it's just there and it's kind of like bleeding you out a little bit. This is something where you're actually going to like fully be able to heal from this. It's not something that has to remain just like an untouched wound for you that's impacting things. Like you don't have to live with this, you don't have to live like this, but it is going to have to be addressed and healed if you want it to be integrated, and then it will be essentially like it dissipates, so it's not something that you're dealing with anymore. Interesting. All right. Anything else? You're learning more about yourself on an emotional level and on a psychological level. I think there's also this feeling that this is not something that can be healed for some reason, but I'm not seeing that be the case. But there can be a feeling of like, what's the point? But that's not to push you away from this. It's to have you investigate why you would be thinking that about this situation. All right, my friends, we are going to leave the reading here. I would like to thank everyone for connecting. Thank you for tuning in. I am sending everybody love, and I hope to catch you guys next time.